Luke Richardson, welcome to Suit Up the Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. This is great. It's good to be here.
I am so excited. I love talking adventure fiction, so we're going to have a good conversation. But before we get into that, Luke, do us all a favor and give yourself a brief character biography. Introduction to who is
Fantastic.
Luke Richardson.
I wondered whether you were going to go with me or the characters that I write about then. I was ready to go for both. Yeah, so I'm Luke Richardson and I write archaeological thrillers, as you pointed out, adventure fiction. My stories take on sort of hidden manuscripts, secret civilizations, ancient curses, these sorts of things. And what I try to do is I take a little bit of a grain of truth, something that I've gleaned from a adventure somewhere or other, mix it up with a load of fun stuff and come out with this really this great page turning adventure at the end of it. So there's always, I want my readers to have this element of, number one, it takes you to a fun and interesting
hmm
place. Number
hmm
two, it could be true, or maybe
hmm
there are elements of the story that are true.
Brad Thor is one of like the apex thriller writers. I was watching an interview he did recently and he talked about wanting to make sure that the reader can't really tell that bleed between fact and fiction because he starts with that, oh, this science thing or this tech thing could potentially be real, or like there's actually that thing that is close to it, and then let's just start extrapolating into the fun stuff. And that moment of faction, I think is what he called it, that you're
Faction,
trying
that's
to
great.
achieve. And I think that you've done a great job of that with your archaeological thrillers.
Thank you. Thank you. That means a lot. That really does. And yeah, I'm pleased that you thought that.
What got you into writing?
Good question. I was an English teacher for a long while, and well, about 7 years, and I felt it was ready for a change. And during that time, I'd started to just sort of play with writing some short stories and that sort of thing, and and just knew that I wanted to do something creative. You know, I had that itch to do something creative. And teaching, whilst I initially thought it would be creative, it turned out it wasn't quite as creative as I thought it was going to be after 7 years of teaching the same stuff over and over again. So I sort of went back to travel, and that's been a through line of my
hmm
creativity for years and years. And I tell this story of arriving in India for the first time in 2011 when I first been there, and how transformative that was. That being in a new culture, being in a new place,
hmm
seeing different lives right there and then,
hmm
and so I started writing books that involved this really evocative sense of place. And my first series was a set of international detective thrillers which hunt down missing people. So the
Okay,
first one the first one
that's
goes to
really awesome.
Kathmandu, which is similar to India. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I really pleased with that. And but they weren't really a genre, right?
hmm
International detective mysteries, like it doesn't really know what it is. It's great fun. I loved it. I think you'd enjoy them as well. But they didn't really know what they were. So when I went in for round two, wanted to
hmm
write something that was going to sell books and was going to
hmm
attract people. I sort of latched onto the archaeological thing and went with it.
hmm So, a couple of notes on that. Andrew Warren, mutual friend, he
Mm,
talks about when he was writing, trying to make sure that you like took the audience on a vacation. And I think that that's
sure.
something that you've done really well in your books too, is you feel the sense of place, especially when archaeological thrillers really can take this globe-trotting quality, and you've done a great job of evoking that feeling of like when you watch an Indiana Jones film or a James Bond movie, you get to experience, oh, I'm in Cuba, I'm in I can't remember where they go in Octopussy in India, but there, like stuff like that.
Exactly. That is my intention. I want the reader to be there, opening that book and feeling. I think about it as like feeling the Caribbean warmth on their face and
hmm
smelling the grilling octopus from the grill over here, or tasting the mojito that's being made over there. It's those evocative senses that if you've been
hmm
lucky enough to go to one of these places, you bring home with you. And I want to share that with people through the
hmm
writing.
So, Eden Black, where did she start? The Arc Files, I read it, I loved it. How you said that you were like, okay, let's come up with an archaeological thriller here. How did Eden Black kind of pop onto the page?
It's a good question. Mm, mm. So I wanted to have a protagonist that was a little bit different.
hmm
I didn't want and this is not to belittle writers that do this, I'm picking my words carefully. I didn't want like the washed up, retired military guy, you
No.
know, back in a small town, realize that sort of thing. I didn't want that. I didn't want her to have those sort of traditional skills. I wanted her to
Mhm.
be a bit of an outsider, a bit of a lone
Mhm.
wolf. Um, and yeah, I also thought that it was there was an interesting concept there that she was sort of this the, she turns into this sort of loner who's dropped out of the society, and she lives in a van
Mhm.
and she lives in a truck in the British woodlands, and her father is quite a well-known archaeologist, but she's distancing herself from him because she doesn't like the sort of fame that it's brought. And but yet she's brought into, of course, she's brought into the action through the
Mhm.
events of the first book. No spoilers. But yes, I wanted her to be a bit of an every person while also having
Mhm.
some fun with her too.
Yeah, I think that one of the things I loved is characters should have like this defining quality in some ways. Um, you gave her someone who rejects authority and dislikes it at any turn. And I thought that was an interesting through line for establishing who she is as a character because then it informs so many of the choices she makes.
That's an interesting point, and you'll see that through the series as well as she rejects it more, but realizes ultimately that she's sort of fighting a losing battle. That perhaps there are some authorities that you can't reject or that are
Well,
in your benefit to play alongside.
and isn't that like so much of what it means to mature as an adult is to wrestle with what that means? It's a very archetypal thing actually in a lot of ways. Coming to grips with this is where I have to bend or this is where I need to okay, I can't change this rock face, but I can climb the other one.
Yes, that's right. And the characters tease her throughout the books, the later books, that when they first met, she was living in a truck in the woods, and now look at her doing whatever she's doing, and she's like, "It's not a truck. I was happy then. I was fine." But she herself realizes through the books that actually there is some benefit to working with other people and
Hmm.
be working as part of a larger whole.
Hmm. So the Eden Black series at this point, the eighth book is coming out this year, right?
The eighth will be out this year. The seventh came out in November. Yes, so I'm
Wow,
working on the eighth. Was doing it this morning. I'm on it. I'm on it. All right. We're going as quickly as I can.
that's awesome. What has
Thank
it
you.
been
Yeah.
like? You hinted a little bit at the evolution of the character. I think that's one of the cool things about having a series character is you can kind of play with them growing up in some ways. What has that been like?
It's been good. It's been fun. Yeah, I've really enjoyed it. I've sometimes been caught out where I've said something in a previous book, and then I'm like, oh no, I've got to honor that now. I've got to go through with what I put in book three.
You have to
Because you write
archaeological
things.
on your own stories.
Oh, exactly this. And I think as a writer, I've written about 2 books a year, two of those books a
Hmm.
year. So I'm on 8 now, but I released the first one in 2022. So yeah, around about 2 a year. Um, and that's been quite a long period of, of,
Hmm.
of time, obviously. Now, a reader would read them in perhaps some would
Yes.
read them in a week, others in a couple of days, others in a month, whatever. So they've got a much closer appreciation of what changes between book one and seven now, as I have. And this is a real problem. Yeah, I've got to constantly remind myself: did I already do that? Have I already addressed this thing? Yeah,
Do you have like a series Bible or some kind of method of tracking all the
I
characters and the things
should.
that are happening?
I definitely should. Yes, particularly as the series gets longer, but I haven't yet.
Okay. Hey, if it makes you feel better, I was talking to a guy who he's got like 20 some books and he still hasn't done something like that. He's like, I just download them all on my Kindle and now I just search if I have any questions.
That's a good idea. That is a good idea. Yeah. I think it's one of those things you could get one of the AI tools to do very,
Oh,
very easily, actually. Read your books and list the characters and give me some
that's
tropes.
that's a really good way of doing
Definitely
it.
something, definitely something to do.
So I work in organic compliance and we created like an AI chatbot for our internal that basically just took care of the regulations and then here is our program manual. And so between those, like it has the full data that we really need to work with if we have a question for it. Now it's imperfect, but I think it is cool that now you can create tools like that as a writer. Here are all my
Yeah.
books. This is like what I'm going for. Have I contradicted myself at any point? And it can do the data
Yes.
analysis for you.
That's exactly right. Yeah, that would be so useful to have, wouldn't it, to know?
So I saw you made a comment in one of your past interviews about finding your target audience. And you mentioned earlier when we were talking about how we transitioned from the international detectives to these archaeological thrillers. What I think this is an important thing because a lot of early writers say, I'm writing for everyone. And
Hmm.
as you know, that doesn't always pan out so well. Knowing who your audience is and what stories you're trying to write is really important. What did that process look like for you? And what do you think new authors should do to help kind of establish this is what I'm doing and this is who I'm writing it for?
Yes. So it depends, is my first answer to that.
Great
If you're
answer.
a,
Perfect answer.
and a lot of people ask me this, and it depends what you want to do, right? Because if
Hmm.
you've got a book in your heart that wants to be written about whatever it might be, I don't know, what you walked around the world and want to talk about that, right? Don't think about marketing. Just write the book that you want to
Hmm.
write. That's absolutely fine. I was in a different position. And when I looked to leave my job, I was thinking, I need or I want to write books to make some money, to make
Hmm.
it a living. So I was very conscious about picking an area to write in that I loved, of course. That's really
Hmm.
important to me. I do this
Hmm.
every single day. I don't want to get bored of it. But one that also can be
Commercially viable.
has yeah, that's right, has people that want to read it and can be communicated very easily. Like I
Hmm.
say to you, I write books about archaeology, about ancient curses, about relics, about secret civilizations. You're like, got it. I know, and that might be got it, it's not my thing. Fine. It might be, where is it? Give me that book now. In which case, you're one of my tribe. So yeah, it's about if that's for you and you want to make a living of that. It's
Hmm.
about where can you sort of put your flag in the ground that people will see that and resonate with that.
Hmm. Talking about archaeology here, you said that you do try to put that grain of truth into your stories of it might be true. What do you do for research when you're picking? Because like that's the thing, especially with archaeology, is the artifact. The MacGuffin matters so
Yeah.
much, the curse, the object. And that's where it's fun that you can kind of play with anything across the world. How do you come up with that?
It's a good question. Travel is mostly the thing that we do. My wife and I are lucky enough now to travel quite a lot. As I talk to you now, I'm in Morocco. We're here for January because it's rubbish in
Ooh.
England. Yes.
I was like, that seems like more sunshine, natural light than should be
So
expected.
good. It's what you need. It's what we need. Yes. And so this is, in fact, my last book was written in Morocco, so the next one isn't. But that is one of the things that most often inspires my travel, inspires my books. So I'll see
Mhm.
something or I'll read something about a place that we're going to go or a place that we're in, and I'll think, there's a story here. There's got to be a story in this point. And sometimes that's the next book. Sometimes that features in a book in the future.
Mhm.
But it's about that sort of awakening, that curiosity for me that I then take that thing and put that into a story somehow.
Mhm. Analyze this Mr. Bond is an account on Instagram. He's been starting to, as he prepares to write his first novel, he's been sharing stuff on Substack. And one of the recent things was just the comment on you need to have curiosity. Like the
Hmm.
lack of curiosity is like the death of creativity in the mind. And being able to have something that tickles that part of your brain then allows you to write something that hopefully tickles the brain of the reader.
Yes, that's so good, isn't it? And I, I I wonder if you've ever experienced that where you see something and bits just sort of fall into place, and you're
Hmm.
like, "What if?" And all of a sudden, there's three or four different scenes that you can see from
Hmm.
from from that one thing that you've seen or one thing that you've discovered. Now,
Hmm.
sometimes for me, that's a setting, of course, because of the travel, and other times I start with the MacGuffin. Other times I don't know what the MacGuffin is until halfway through the story, and I've got to sort of work that out, which is quite a messy way of writing, but it seems to work for me.
Well, every story is a different kind of monster in its own way that needs to be defeated in some way, shape, or form. And I think again, that's part of the exciting thing with writing is you get to have this constant challenge. Like if I don't think non-writers are quite aware that it's not a formula every time. And if it was, it would be boring. So usually there's just all of these things that no book comes together the same way usually.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I was saying this on another podcast a couple of weeks ago. I don't know there's another profession where we create in the same way because you wouldn't be a carpenter and go, I don't know
Hmm
what I'm going to create today, and I'm just going to sit down with a chunk of wood and start hammering away. You've got a clear plan, right? I'm making a table, I'm making a chair, whatever. But for us, we're sort of we discover as we go. Now,
hmm
when you write a series like I do, of course there are boundaries, and they
Yes.
are
You've
that's a
established
good
the
thing. That's a good
context.
thing. Yeah,
Yes.
it's not in space. You know,
hmm
we're not going to time travel. No one's got superpowers. These sorts of things are a
hmm
given.
Well,
Other than that,
I think that that's important though, because that's where I have made the argument. That's where I struggle with. I love the Indiana Jones films, but like just as a comparison here, by the time we get to Dial of Destiny, I really it pushed my incredulity just a little too far because I feel like we broke the rules for how the Indiana Jones universe is set up. And once, especially when you're working with artifacts, you have to kind of establish how far are the artifacts going to push the reality of your world.
I'll push back with you a little bit on that. In that the Nazis died because they had their eyes open when they had the Ark of the
hmm
Covenant, and yet Indy survived because he closed his eyes and
I
didn't look at the power.
I agree, but that's where it's the difference between supernatural power and physics, I guess would be the way I'd put it. Whereas
Sure.
I feel like the dial isn't supposed to be a supernatural entity. It's
Yes,
a
I
physics
understand.
entity. So it's just pushing
Mm,
a different kind of it sits at a different what's what I'm looking for. It's a different kind of thing in my brain when I watch it.
yes, and I
That's the way
suppose
I would
that
argue it.
I agree with you as well in that the sequence that sequence in Raiders where
Hmm
the one we were talking about is very short. It's probably less than a minute. Whereas that sequence in the time slip and whatever in Dial of Destiny is probably it's quite a long part of the story, isn't it? And
hmm
there's it's sort of weaved in a different way. Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right.
But he's saying
I
this just
think
because he's on my show. That's okay.
no, I agree with you. I've not thought of it in that way before, and not I can see where you're where you're where you're thinking.
Well, to that point though, I think that let's talk a little bit about this. I prepped you before I hit record so you didn't feel like I just slammed your head with a baseball bat. But adventure fiction, this archaeological thrillers, the idea of let's go on a globetrotting adventure in search of something or a conspiracy. These are not things that tend to be in traditional publishing within like the big five. I think we've got a couple here and there,
Mm,
but
that's true.
Clive Cussler is like the only version where this has still existed. And outside of him, in terms of the big five, generally there isn't anything. Why do you think it is that in that scope, the good old-fashioned adventure story tends to be less commercial, for lack of a better term?
Yeah,
Because like authors
it's
such as yourself have proven this is a story that people want to read.
mm, it's a good question because I feel like the stories like I write are quite traditional in the way that they are presented. They're not.
Hmm
It's the same format as a book that's 50
hmm
years old or whatever. It's the same sort of thing.
hmm
Relic, antagonist,
Yes.
interesting setting, whatever. However it falls together. Um, Now I think there are some bigger players in the traditional publishing space. Dan Brown, as an example,
hmm
although his a less adventure fiction, they do have that sort of not so much archaeology, but like relic
hmm
and that sort of base. Although his have become more techy as he's gone on. He's lost
Yeah.
that sort of like search for the Holy Grail
Well,
aspect that he had
and
in the first ones.
I just want to give you a huge shout out on this. I think that that's one of the hardest things for me as a reader is I feel like it's because this is where I struggle with some of the Clive Cussler stuff I've read because I've tried reading the Fargo files and it feels like tech becomes this instant. The world's less analog.
Yes.
And I part of what I think is fun about archaeological story is it feels like this is a very analog thing. Like you are
Mm.
solving a puzzle or you are deciphering clues. You're not just spitting something into a computer to have it tell you, oh, this is where you need to go and what you need to do.
That's true. And but that becomes a that is a challenge as a writer with
Hmm.
technology. How many of these stories would be ruined by just like putting a tracker on it? Where's the relic? Oh, it's over there. you know, there's there's got to be this fun. And half of the problems I have, my books take place in the modern day, although of course they
Hmm.
reference older times. Half the problems I have is sort of saying, right, why can't we use our phones here? Why can't we,
Hmm.
why can't we use technology here? But yes, that's a fun part of it. Going back to your question, I don't know definitively why this is something that hasn't been picked up on in the traditional world. I wonder whether this my genre has yet to have its sort of big day in the sun. We've
Hmm.
seen the sort of romanticy thing recently. We've
Hmm.
seen the cozy mystery, uh,
Uh-huh.
getting really into that. There's been all these genres that have gone up and had their moment in the sun recently, and I don't know whether ours is due for it. I'd love that to happen, or whether it will just sort of perennially sort of sit there doing people who just perennially enjoy it, which would be great too.
Hmm.
But maybe that's why. Maybe we're waiting for that to happen, and that would be great for all adventure authors like me.
Actually, it's funny you use the word perennial because I actually did create a note here where I recently read Ryan Holiday's book Perennial Seller. I'm not certain
Oh
if you've
yes.
heard of it before. Um, but it made me think you have done a great job of writing perennially selling books. Like you've written really good archaeological thrillers that I think are a mainstay of. Like if you look today on the Amazon adventure fiction page for both men and women, I'm pretty certain that the first Eden Black book does come up still as like in the top 100 on both of the pages. So hats off to you first and foremost.
Thank you. Thank
But
you.
I'm curious how intentional were you on creating a perennial seller when you were making the book, or was it just because you said this was take two, trying let's
Hmm.
do a new series. Was it that you were intentionally trying to get a perennial seller at that point, or it's just, hey, the sauce clicked?
I was conscious of doing a genre that was tried and tested, yes, rather than something that one of these new hybrids that's
Hmm.
created all the time. And those authors absolutely smash it. Don't get me wrong, they smash it. But I feel like there's a risk in that, right? It's like
Hmm.
buying a one of those NFTs. It could go absolutely wild, or it could drop to nothing. And the thing is, books take a while to create. They're not a
Hmm.
they're not a 2 minute click and done job. It's a
Hmm.
year worth of work, or at least 6 months to a year's worth of work. And I'd absolutely hate to be writing, some zombie warrior romance set in a small town America, and all of a sudden that goes from the hottest thing on the Amazon charts to no one wants it. It's a really awkward. How annoying would that be?
Someone has definitely written this story, and I'm utterly terrified to read it.
Oh, these things happen. Yeah, yeah.
But I think again, that's where what's cool about seeing your work is that you've taken these are things that people recognize easily, but you've written it with such a unique point of view and it's a fresh story. It isn't
Mm.
just the same Indiana Jones ripoff. Like I think that it's the low-hanging fruit for most dudes is write an Indiana Jones, Indiana clones, write an Indiana clones, put it on KDP and
I
watch
like
as
that.
it goes out to crickets. But you've written genuinely like a really fun adventure series. So again,
Thank you. That's great to hear. That's great to hear. Thank you.
what advice do you have for writers that want to write an archaeological story that doesn't just repeat the same thing everyone else does?
I would be the first thing I would think about. Now you've got to, this is a real balancing act because you
Hmm.
want to set it somewhere that people know,
Hmm.
but you've got to balance that up about setting it somewhere new.
Hmm.
You've got to really be careful about it just being, as you say, the same Indiana Jones setting that everyone else has used, or somewhere that no one's heard of, right? So you've got to sort of be really careful in really conscious in where you choose to set it and the legends and myths that you set behind it, because again, as I say, it needs to be people need to know about it,
Hmm.
but so that they have a connection with it, right? Like mine's called the Ark Files. You know what the Ark is? It's about a pre-Diluvian manuscript that was buried during the flood, so that well, in fact, it would have been written after, during, and after the flood, and then buried after that, and then discovered in the Victorian era, and so it's you get that from the title. So what I'm saying
Hmm.
is pick your MacGuffin and your slice of history, your period of history that you're going into very carefully.
I think that's such great advice. I can't remember which book it is that I read it in, but the idea of picking your setting should be ideally every choice you want to make in creating the story is this is the only version in which these things can kind of happen. It's the best version of events. It's the best story you can maximize that context for the tale instead of it being incidental to the plot. If James Bond goes to Morocco, why is it Inspector? It's literally just him standing at a train station. Doesn't need to be Morocco. It can be any arid desert that he's standing in for that 2 minute sequence where he was point A to
Sure.
point B. Morocco doesn't get used at all. Ideally, you want something that actually factors or weaves or is in some way adding to the story.
Yes. Like you want I suppose what you're doing is you're allowing the reader's imagination to fill in the blanks here. We talked
Hmm.
earlier about we were sort of describing a scene on a Caribbean beach. Everyone knows what a Caribbean beach looks like, right? Whether you've
Hmm.
been there or not. So your imagination is doing the heavy lifting for me as the writer. I don't
Hmm.
need to describe much. I can just tell you there are palm trees hanging over the sand. There's the sea sort of there's the sea doing its thing. There's some reggae music on. I don't need to go into real detail about these sorts of things. You're already there with me. And actually by doing that, whether it's St. Lucia or Cuba or
Hmm.
Grand Cayman, it doesn't matter because you've got the image.
Is there a location that you haven't used in a story yet that you're looking forward to using, or is on like your bucket list of I need to go there? Clearly, a story's going to happen there.
Yes. We just booked, my wife and I, last week to go to Peru to do the Inca Trail.
Ooh,
Yes. At
that's
the end of this
cool.
year. So so the next book will be set in Paris. I've been there before, but we're going
Hmm.
again. That's very close to us. It's only an hour or so on a flight, so that's easy. Um, that's the one I'm writing at the moment. And then at the end of the year, after that one's come out, we're going to go to Peru. And I have no plan what the story will be, but I'm trusting emergence that somewhere in the altitude and the and the walk up in the mountains, I will find a story. So I'll keep you posted.
Please do. That's really awesome. Like again, just it has such rich culture to it. And
Mm.
have you ever heard of the Al Colby mysteries? David
No.
Dodge wrote the To Catch a Thief. He wrote a series about a essentially he's a private detective in South America where he like goes Guatemala, Peru, and one of the other South American countries. But again, it just watching Secret of the Incas. I watch it and I'm like, wow, this looks a lot like David Dodge's Plunder of the Sun. Just
Nice.
if you love Indiana Jones, I highly recommend watching that film and reading Plunder of the Sun just because they have so many different like overlaps, which you wouldn't expect.
Sure. Love that. Yes. This is it. I've got so many ideas sort of, but that's the next book. I need to concentrate
Hmm.
on this one first, so don't
How
get
do
me
you
started.
how do you stay from getting ahead of yourself? Because like so right now I'm working on my Mitch Mayhew series. They've been just these quick, writing them like old serials. So
Lovely.
each one is just like 20,000 words. Three of them create like a full season, a full story. The problem is I'm trying to finish season one and I'm already looking at season two going, okay, then this happens and that happens and that happens. And it's hard to like not to get too far ahead of myself. What do you do to kind of stay in balance? Because you need to get some ideas put down, but then you got the current story you have to finish.
This is a problem, I'll be honest with you. This is a thing. And this is where that saying about 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration comes from. Because really, you can't sell inspiration. Ideas are worthless, right? I'm sorry to say
Amen.
they're worthless. You need to write the damn book and get it out. And that's the important thing. And so, yeah, there's a point at which I just need to sort of wrestle with myself and I get really grumpy about it. I'm like, yeah, I want to do the next one now. This idea is so much better, you know. And I'm saying, no, you need to finish this book first and then you can do the next one. So, a bit of stern talking, a bit of grace as well, going easy on myself during the workflow and that sort of thing. And yeah, it's I sort of know it now. I've got the routine, so I know
Mhm.
when to be hard and when to be a bit nicer with my creative process.
Well, and I can I just say I think that's one of the awesome things about you guys implementing travel as a part of your trip and as part of the
Mm,
process because then even when I don't know if you're like me where all of a sudden you get to the point where you're writing and it's like darn it, my brain is not going to put any juice out. The stone has been squeezed completely. I just keep running up, and the more you run up against the wall, the more grumpy you get. Taking a
sure.
walk is like one of the greatest things ever at that point. And when you are in the locale that you are trying to write about, or you can still be doing research. It's so nice to be able to implement that as a part of your process.
Yes, yes, it is. That's right. And just getting away from the screen, getting out, having the sun on
Hmm.
the. It's windy today, to be fair, so it's not quite so nice outside. But yeah, and seeing. I had a walk through the Medina earlier, and there's people selling spices and fish and fruit and whatever, as they have done for hundreds of years, and that's really inspiring. That's really fun to do.
Hmm.
And that was one of the another reason why this sort of step into writing was so important to me because I always loved the idea of travel as more than holiday, as a
Hmm.
as a sort of lifestyle choice.
Hmm. That's awesome. Question with that, because I think that this plays a little bit into it. One of my favorite questions to ask writers is, do you have a writing routine? And if so, what does it look like? Because traveling, I can either really work well as a part of your routines, or it can throw all of them off. How does that work for you?
Yes, I do have a writing routine, which I tend to change it a lot. Because when I was at work years ago, I would get up before work, and maybe this is what
Hmm.
you do, and you do sort of an hour, and it's
Hmm.
the best hour ever, and you're really inspired for that hour, and you get loads done, and it feels great. And after that hour on the way to work, you're like, if only I had all day, I could do so much. And I tell you, it doesn't happen like that because when you have all day, you spend the first hour just checking the sales from the day before, checking the marketing, replying
Hmm.
to some emails,
Which
making coffee.
is a part of the job, but yes.
Of course it is. Of course it is. So no, to cut your question, to cut to the answer, I now write. I'm creative for 3 days a week,
Hmm.
and I sort of limit myself on that because that means there's two reasons that works. It means that we can fit travel days or
Hmm.
days where we're off doing excursions or seeing family or whatever we
Hmm.
do during life. But also it means that if I wake up and I haven't slept very well and the
Hmm.
ideas just aren't coming, I'm like, doesn't matter. I've got another day this week. I can fit that back in again. So you can work on that. And doing 3 days a week, and I do about 3 to 4 hours each day.
Hmm.
Doing that, I can normally do around 10,000 words a week, which,
That's awesome.
yeah, so that's my routine. And I've tried doing more. The problem
Hmm.
with doing more is that then you write about 40, 50,000 words in 3 or 4 weeks or whatever, and you just get so exhausted that you then need a couple of weeks off to do something else. That it that it
Hmm.
that it doesn't sort of stack up. So for me, I found that sort of little and often routine
Hmm.
works a little bit better.
That's awesome. It reminds me of I enjoy fitness stuff. So I love my
Mm,
good old-fashioned meathead bodybuilder routine, 8 to 12 reps, 4 sets per exercise type situation. But I like doing full body days
mm.
because at that point you can do 3 days a week instead of needing to do every day in theory.
Yes.
But what I love about that as just a comparison is it's when you are able to get 3 to 4 hours 3 times a week, it gives you that consistency without overworking the muscle, without getting to
That's
the
it.
point where your brain is like, why did I do this? It's just exhausted. It's still a physical thing that needs calories and rest. And the
Mm.
same way your bicep gets overworked, your brain gets overworked.
Sure. And it's not that often that you can't that if it's feeling a bit laborious, because it
Hmm.
does sometimes, right? That's the
Hmm.
thing. You sit down and you're like, right, okay, I'll do 4 hours this morning, and then that's one day done. And generally, by the time I'm half an hour in, I'm in the flow and it's going
Yep.
well, and the ideas are going, and I'm like, yeah, this is great. What? And then I think back to half an hour before, and I was thinking, oh.
Oh, how
So yeah.
inertia plagues us all.
I know. It's funny, isn't it? It's just like that inner child. I think I've haven't changed since the age of about 6 in that creative mindset.
But that is also probably part of the reason why you maintain a joy with it. I'm not certain. You said that you're familiar with Ryan Holiday, so I don't know if you've read Mastery by Robert Greene.
No, I've not
It's
read that one.
highly recommend it. It's basically his book on what does it mean to become a master at something. And
Ah,
one of his main points was A, find something that you genuinely enjoy because being a master at something is only worthwhile if you actually like it. Because there's no point in the dedication unless you're going to do that. And so, like, part of his, if you want to know what you want to be a master of, tap into what is the thing that brought you joy as a kid,
mm,
essentially.
mm, mm.
Because that's probably the thing that, like, at an early stage was an important thing to you and still is that you've buried through years of adulting.
That's interesting, isn't it? And that sort of goes back to what we were talking about picking a genre a little while ago.
Hmm.
Is you don't want to be a master of a genre that you have no interest in. So pick one that gives you something back in the way that in the way that you are and the things that you like to do.
Hmm. And I think that that's great advice. Luke, this has been a fun conversation. Where can people go to learn more about you and your work and what do you have coming down the pipeline?
My website, lukerichardsonauthor.com, is the place to go for all my books.
Awesome. And you also do some podcasting too, correct?
I do, yes, the Adventure Story podcast. I'm currently working on series 2, on season 2 at the moment. And this podcast is all about the stories behind adventures. So
I
in
love
season
it.
1, we talked about the truth behind the crystal skulls. We talked about the real story behind my book, The Ark Files. Or what else did we talk about? Um, the myths related to the sinking of the Titanic. Oh, there's loads of them. Like, there was 22 episodes in season 1. I'm thinking of doing a similar amount in season 2. But they're really sort of you've heard the Indiana Jones version as an
Hmm.
example. What really happened? What's the truth
Hmm.
behind that?
Can I just say, I think that that is amazing. If I call it content marketing, I feel like it's almost like a slur, but that's not what I mean. It's
It
just,
is, yeah.
it's genuinely like you are making something that you are passionate about, that you find interesting, and is a great way for people who are interested in these kinds of things to discover your books. Like that's the reason I do this podcast, and it's just, I think that that's awesome. Like as a tool in your tool belt.
Thank you, thank you. I've enjoyed doing it as well, and I've had some great conversations and got been able to research some things that I wouldn't usually have been able to. So that's been fun too.
Luke, like I said, it's been a pleasure. You're always welcome back on the show. I will link everything in the show notes and tell people they definitely need to check out the Eden Black series. The Arc Files is the first book. Start there, and you'll be at the races after that.
Thank you so much. It's been great.